This
So
conference will now be recorded.
like I said, Omar, really, it's been a pleasure having you as part of the community, and we really appreciate your willing to share your incredible story. It's been very inspiring for me, and I'm very happy you're willing to share it with everybody else. So without further ado, um, Omar, please take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rabbi Senior, and thank you, the Beth Jacob community. I just owe so much to you all. So the least I could do is tell you my story, which I have aptly titled From Juvenile Delinquency to Judaism. I usually tell bits of my story in a non-linear fashion, responding to limited questions asked at a Shabbos table. What made you want to become a Jew? I get this question or some form of this question a lot, which makes sense. Some people may be self-conscious and feel uncomfortable with explaining themselves, but definitely not me. I believe people like to hear other people's stories. We watch TV and movies because we are interested in other people's lives. Hopefully not too much, but you get the point. So I preface my story from juvenile delinquency to Judaism with a message that I want to convey to you all. When you find me at a Shabbos dinner table, at an afternoon kiddush meal, shul, whenever it may be, please feel free to ask me anything. I'm an open book. So true to my nonlinear storytelling ways, I'll start off with the climax so there's no surprises. In 2010, I met a rabbi when I was serving a 24-year prison sentence in the level 4 180 design maximum security prison, Pelican Bay State Prison. This Rabbi Joseph Hampel, introduced me to Judaism. I was released early from prison after serving a little over 16 years, and I immediately set forth to entering into an Orthodox Jewish conversion program through the Rabbinical Council of California, the RCC. I've been out of prison for about 19 months now. Okay, so those are some of the basics. Now let me fill in a little bit more of the details. So how does one embark on a journey to live life as a Torah observant Jew coming where I came from? One could probably say, how does one become a committed gangster as a kid? How does one become an American child soldier? I'm not sure how to sum it up succinctly in a presentation like this. It's quite complicated, and it involves a lot of different events coming together to slowly mold me, but I can attempt to tell a bit of my story. I may explain how I believe I was processing my past experiences, particularly during my adolescence, but please don't take it as anything more than that. I am fully responsible for my actions. To say otherwise, to limit my moral culpability takes away my agency and denies my ability to be a fully autonomous, morally culpable actor in my life. I guess a good place to start is within the American social construct of Blackness. While I'm not a fan of homogenizing terms such as person of color or forcing all of everyone's reality to be seen through the lens of colored social constructs, Blackness as a social construct existed in an intimate way for me at one point. I'm the child of a mother who immigrated from Sri Lanka and a father who immigrated from Jamaica. I've never had an extended family that lived within the United States of America. At the age of 2 years old, my mother divorced from my father and married her second husband, who just happened to be a white man. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, and in a vacuum, it's not. He was a good man who provided love and support and attention. However, W.E.B. Du Bois spoke about double consciousness, about how the socialized experience of Blackness has a Black man looking at itself through the eyes of the dominant American culture and through the eyes of Black America. But with these two lenses fused together, distortion becomes a higher likelihood. For biracial children, the statistical likelihood for maladjustment exceed that of the general population. And I could only wonder about the statistics of children born in a sort of a cultural isolation, not exposed to any part of their lineal heritage, and then thrust into the social milieu of perceived Black identity. Black children didn't perceive me as authentically Black because I didn't have a direct cultural base or family pool that I was linked to. And my neighborhood had children bullying me in a fashion that I was constantly called the N-word like it was my actual name. So within that backdrop, without connecting numerous defining incidences, I would say that when I was exposed to particular characters that allowed me to form a hyper masculine persona steeped in the worst of negative stereotypes, I took the bait. For my personhood not to be questioned, to be formidable and perceived as cool to my young, naive mind, for my authenticity to be unchallenged was something I made the choice to embrace. Not one to vacillate. I try to become whatever I claim to be, whoever I define myself as. I try to become fully without any logical inconsistencies. Consequences can't deter someone of convictions. I felt that a man is a man due to his adherence to the standards he proclaims. And I claim to be a gangster. Status and power within the context of a criminal hierarchy in my immediate environs was easily attainable without any long-term planning. Being a gangster was a practical choice, a reasoned choice, a choice I approached with integrity towards the rules that govern gangsters. I became a sort of ideological criminal, if that is a thing. I genuflected at the altar of self. Instant gratification seemed to make the most sense and feel the best to me, so I did what I felt. So I understood that there was a right and a wrong that existed somewhere out there in the ether. Why should that apply to me? This wrong and right was understood to me more in an abstract sense than a concrete morality. Kibbutz Avim was not a basic ethic that forced me to peer outside my adolescence narcissism and realize that my own experience was not the end all and be all. I did not take the time to consciously consider that how I acted affected other people who love me. I don't want to neglect also that I had a profound, frightening realization at around the age of 8 years old that I was going to die. No matter what I accomplished in life, that was my guaranteed fate. So whatever happened to me was kind of pointless. While I'll never fully bought into this enough to consciously acknowledge this conclusion, it may have played a part in me not caring about any long-term plans. Living true to the reality I created was a compelling enough reason for me to continue on my crooked path. Whatever the reasons, I was a gangster. Studies show that people who end up in jail have a significantly higher incidence of trauma predating their incarceration. And while it wasn't specific trauma that I responded to in a maladaptive way, the lifestyle I lived exposed me to trauma, which was quickly compounded in a sort of chain reaction. A therapeutic technique is to convey empathy with the client who has experienced trauma in a way that shifts the self-defeating blame they may misdirect towards themselves. But for those who indeed play a part in perpetuating their own exposure to traumatic incidents, there is no recourse. I have to accept and own that I was my own worst enemy. I have to own the fact that shame and remorse has no real mitigating factors. I spent numerous stints in juvenile hall. I was arrested and went to trial during my senior year in high school. I beat the case, not because I was fully innocent, but a drug dealer was robbed and he pointed the finger at me. The problem is that when a drug dealer decides to eliminate the competition by pointing the finger at his assailant, they have to lie to the police investigators about what actually was stolen and the circumstances surrounding the event. Because of such lies, I was able to mount a defense that allowed me to leave the courtroom victoriously. This wasn't a time for self-reflection. This was a time for gloating and even heavier involvement in gang activities in order to show my peers how dedicated to criminality I was, how unconcerned with the consequences I was. When I was 16 years old, my friends retaliated against me and shot up my mother's house while my family, including my 10-year-old sisters and my 11-year-old brother, were sleeping. I had my mother's house robbed on multiple occasions. My mother has had her vehicle shot up. On numerous occasions, police officers and their dogs raided my mother's residence. Soon after I graduated high school at the age of 17, I was arrested for narcotic sales and weapon possession, sentenced to a year in juvenile hall. I was released when I was 18 and a half. And months after I turned 19, I was arrested with a mini Uzi, a loaded 45, and multiple rounds of ammunition. And I was charged with a home invasion robbery. I wasn't too concerned about this particular robbery charge because, like my previous robbery charge, I assumed that the circumstances, the true circumstances, would allow for me to mount a similar defense that would lead to a not guilty verdict. And I was imbued with so much hubris that I bailed out of jail a week later and committed myself to robbing even more drug dealers and building my reputation in the streets. 7 months later, I was arrested while out on bail in the heart of gang territory in Long Beach with a sawed-off shotgun and a handgun with a holster on my waist. I bailed out the next day and was arrested the next day by a task force raid that found me with drugs and over 500 rounds of ammunition. I bailed out again and was rearrested for witness intimidation against another gang member. So while the initial robbery charge hadn't been of too much concern to me, I had provided enough evidence of my hyperactive criminality to all but ensure a guilty verdict, and I was eventually sentenced to 24 years in prison for the one initial crime that's assumed all the other charges. I was sentenced to 4 years for the robbery, 10 years for a gun being displayed during the commission of the robbery, and 10 years for the crime being committed for the benefit of a gang. Being sentenced to prison for more years than one has been alive was not sufficient impetus for me to self-reflect, at least initially. As I said before, to be committed to something, to me at least, meant that consequences weren't the determinant of right action. Commitment to one's belief system was all that mattered. I utterly devastated my mother. She suffered depression during these times. My young sisters, they were twins. They would grow up without me. They would graduate high school, get married, and graduate college while I was locked up in prison. And how does a mother talk about her son when the mere inquiry from core workers would force my mother to fumble with the story to hide her embarrassment and not paint me in the negative light of the truth? Her son was sentenced to a quarter century in prison because he was a gangster. I, on the other hand, was steeped within a culture in which I had access to a comfortable rung in the criminal hierarchy. However, socializing soon grew tedious to me, and I drew more into myself since my own thoughts were my only guaranteed companion in prison, being subject to lockdowns and whatnot. The first mainline prison they sent me to was the maximum security Pelican Bay State Prison. I remember sitting in an administrative segregation cell, also known as the hole, for conspiracy to assault a correction officer. Satisfied that however my life played out, my standards of ethics weren't compromised simply due to adversity. It wasn't until later when I was back on the main line that a nagging thought began coalescing with more weight. If integrity to an ethical standard mattered enough to sacrifice my life for, if it need be, there was merit, there was value to sticking by one's ethical code. I knew my standard not to be an ideal standard, and I knew that my code of conduct wasn't the ideal code of conduct that could be attained in this world. Then why not try to search for the best ethical standard that existed and attempt to hold to that? Perhaps a fidelity to something of transcendent importance as opposed to faithfulness to my own psychological desires and subverted morality. I began to question things unflinchingly. Now, all questioning is not necessarily good. I began to think that religion was the opium of the masses, something weak people clung to as a way to contend with the existential angst in life. I began studying religion as a dispassionate person, looking for ways to point out the flaws in other people's way of thinking. I was definitely a jerk during these times. I actually stumbled across a Reformed rabbi that had just begun working at Pelican Bay State Prison during this time in my life. I met up with him really just to argue with him and expose the lacuna in his reasoning. And what I got was not a defense of Judaism, but just a matter of fact, Judaism is beautiful, and if you study history, you can see how it has worked for the Jewish people. I'm paraphrasing here. He didn't try to sell me on the religion, which only intrigued me more. He provided books that I requested, and I would read one every day or two. Of course, I had all the time in the world. I mean, for an avid book reader, maximum security prison does have its perks. I fell in love with Judaism almost immediately. At first, it wasn't so much orthodoxy, though. I ended up transferring to another prison where I continued to teach myself Hebrew, and ended up working for another rabbi there, Rabbi Lon Moskowitz, as the lead Jewish clerk. That was the official title of my position. I originally came at the Torah with a literary high criticism approach, a priori denying its divine authorship, and as such, looking for the evidence to confirm my bias, to align with my predetermined conclusions. With that sort of mind state, born again experience is not the experience of someone like me. I had to immerse myself with an open heart and be open to different noetic truths, that there are different ways of knowing than through the lens of modern scientism. At least when it comes to metaphysical realities. Scientism is not truth in itself. It is not an idol to be worshipped. It has a methodology that one can utilize to analyze material evidence, but its inherent methodology of skepticism cannot be a discipline for spiritual growth or a means to analyze transcendent values. So my gradual change started with a posteriori knowledge. The Jewish people's historical documented experience in this world is the strongest evidence of the authenticity of the Torah and the saliency of Orthodox Judaism. The Jewish people are people who have survived relentless persecution and learned to thrive within the midst of that persecution. The Jews are a people that contributed to the world, a world that perpetually finds new ways to persecute them in ways of outside proportion. That's common denominator is Hesed. As Rabbi Senior mentioned a few weeks ago, this heritage of Hesed as Abraham's children has permeated the world as a light even throughout the darkest of times in Jewish history. After 2,000 years of exile, the Jewish people have returned as sovereigns of their ancestral homeland. For me, this is powerful evidence for the Jewish people having a special relationship with God. Also, there was this Jungian concept that true narratives represent these archetypes that are fundamental organizing principles of our mind and the universe. These narratives are a form of truth that speak to us in a way that reaches deeper inside of us, past the logical, mechanized defense fortress of our prefrontal cortex, and can be processed and experienced in a universal way, or at least in a way that is common amongst people who are affected similarly by these true narratives. And we see the truth within the Torah by how it became a foundational piece to other religions in the world, influencing all of Western culture as well. This is not simply compelling evidence of its uniqueness and veracity, but it's overwhelming evidence of its God-given derivation, and there cannot exist truth independently equaled by means of any other metric. So taking into account the evidence of the Jewish historical experience, the Jewish impact on this world, and the Jungian concept of archetypes, I slowly began to ponder as to why I was looking for ways to discount the authenticity of religion of Torah true Judaism. At Beth Jacob, a Jewish residential addiction treatment center where I'm a therapist trainee at, they speak of spiritual counseling as a method by which a rabbi or a therapist uses scripture or other religious texts as a sort of third person in the room. and how the client responds to the text can say more about the person than the text says about itself. So how I had been approaching religion and Torah had been reflective of the lacunas in my own character development and not a deficiency in religion itself. I came to determine that a key reason that I strained so hard to find flaws in religion was because I was reticent to allow another yoke upon myself to give up a self-governing freedom. I began to stop cherry-picking ethical sentiments, scriptural passages, and mitzvos that were not convenient for me. I decided that the best way to assimilate to the eternal truth in the Torah was to attempt to attach myself to that truth and strive towards a gradual assimilation of that truth into me. A fundamental principle of a Jew is Shavisi Hashem Lenegni Samed. I put Hashem before me always. I mean, if we believe there is a God, and as explicated by Rambam, he is not absent from any part of existence, but instead he is present for everything we do, think, and say. Then how do we honor our Creator? And also, what would be dishonorable to him, knowing that he is always present? I fail horribly at times, but I strive to appreciate Hashem, and Shavisi Hashem Lenegni Samed is the principle my Judaism is founded on, and it is the heritage I will strive as with Hashem to bequeath faithfully to my children. Also, what Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik Zatal expressed in his book Halakhic Man truly resonates with me. Halakha is like the mathematician's perfect circle. Jews are partners with God through the covenant, and that they must sanctify his creation, his world, by attempting to make all of experiential reality conform to the ideal perfect circle of halakha. On a personal rehabilitative level, the structured Torah true way of life with its rabbinic fences has proven quite effective at regulating my Yetzer Hara, since halakha governs every area of human behavior. I spent hours every day studying the broad spectrum of texts that are the elan vital of the spiritual discipline. Humans are creatures of habit. My required religious studies have helped habituate me to Judaism's highly developed system of morality and help me maintain a consciousness of God by tying abstract notions and delineated laws to everyday ritual and practical actions. Also, Harav Yisachar Shlomo Techo, Hashem Yinkom Damo, speaks of Judaism, Torah, as an ancestral heritage in which our forefathers perceived and forged this unique, unprecedented relationship with the source of all being, Hashem. And what we have today has been handed down generation to generation as a spiritual inheritance that is timeless, that is eternal, and that is our responsibility to hand it down to the next generation. I will owe that inheritance to future generations, Be'ezrat Hashem, that proceed from me. Through my conversion, I hope to become fully part of the hour I speak of. I'm attempting to be grafted onto the spiritual roots that gird our heritage together. But let me back up a little. I was in Pelican Bay State Prison for over 4 years, but I had only been involved with the rabbi there, Rabbi Joseph Hampel, for 3 months or so before I left him. I have to note that Rabbi Hampel is one of the kindest people I've ever met. If I never met him and experienced how he presented Judaism to me, I may never begin on this journey to Judaism. So as I was saying, my further growth occurred when I transferred to a prison in San Luis Obispo. This was the first time I participated in a prison Jewish community with a rabbi that oversaw that. Rabbi Lon Moskowitz, hi Rabbi, I see you there, thank you for coming, was the rabbi there, and he changed my life. He saw my steadfast commitment, and he made me the lead Jewish clerk for the Jewish religious community programming there, the first chance it became available. I worked for him for 6 years until he retired. I believe he worked over a couple of decades and a half or so. He challenged me constantly to serve the needs of the Jewish community in prison, as he did for so many years in his prison chaplaincy. Rabbi Moskowitz was the one who taught me that Judaism is behavior modification. My behavior should be in constant refinement. I should be striving to act most appropriately in every circumstance I may find myself in. Rabbi Moskowitz labeled himself a passionate moderate and lived up to his claim, constantly confronting my thoughts and opinions. He did this while giving me the first personal example of a professional, successful male role model who I felt impelled to model my behavior after. Thanks to the rabbi's prodding and personal example, my Judaism became a way of life. I was able to self-actualize and finally feel at home in an identity that wasn't based on false notions derived from these false notions of import of the color of my skin. The rabbi was concerned primarily with my ethical conduct, allowing me to develop a personal theology along the normative lines of tradition. He managed to amass the largest repository of Jewish books and learning material in the California prison system and gave me the space to get lost in the vast corpus of material and find what kind of Jew I wanted to be. On a side note, my Judaism was well received for the most part by other people incarcerated, though anti-Semitism obviously did exist in a prison setting, a prison environment that was defined by racial politics. I would don a tallis and wrap to fill in while skinheads with swastikas passed by me. I even had a cellmate who would play Louis Farrakhan's Final Call CD in our cell. But no matter what situation I found myself, I unwaveringly identified with Klal Yisrael. There were other people who were incarcerated who appreciated my dedication, were intrigued by the strange customs I adopted and by how they observed my behavior and dressed during Shabbat. That actually became the name many people called me. They called me Shabbat. I must add also to the story is that one of the reasons I began to isolate myself and study more was due to my introduction to cell phones. They were obviously contraband in prison, and people would secretly inform on other inmates or rob other inmates for this hot commodity. But hey, if everybody needs a phone out here in the free world, you can bet I needed one in prison. So I got one, and I tried to keep a low profile. During the course of me having the cell phone in prison, a platinum rap artist was housed on my cell block, and I decided to figure out how to use my cell phone to help him record an album. Then I said, hey, why don't I make an album myself? So I did so and got the CD sold in the prison package catalog books and iTunes and Google Play. And it was with my mild promotion for my music that I maintained quite a bit of activity on my Instagram page. And as the classic Jewish love story goes, prisoner meets his basher on Instagram while using his contraband cell phone. Well, maybe not the typical love story, but it's a love story nonetheless. Lauren Ariella, the love of my life. Her existence has been such a profound blessing to me, a blessing I truly don't deserve. How did our story start? It all started with me clicking like on Lauren's photograph that popped up on a Instagram Star of David hashtag search that I was doing. There was this beautiful woman with the flag of Israel taking up all of the background behind her. We followed each other on Instagram, but for the next 6 months, there would be no flirting, no conversations. Then completely out of the blue, Hashem allowed a gate to open and blessings poured forth torrentially. A couple comments back and forth, a couple likes exchanged, and suddenly I was like, who is this woman? We messaged each other, emailed each other, and then talked all within like a matter of hours. The conversation was effortless. Just a few days I fell for her. We texted, talked, and Skyped all throughout the day, each and every day, many times talking for over 4 hours straight into the wee hours of the night. And I don't think people can appreciate that usually in a relationship, people have activities to facilitate that relationship. So you may go to the beach, you may go to the movies, you may go to school together. And so you have an activity to facilitate that conversation, that interaction. We just had each other, our thoughts, us bearing our souls to each other. So we really got to know each other. I told her up front that I had 9 years left in my prison sentence. And there was no realistic way of me getting released early. She told me that she understood, but she would pray to Hashem that I would get out in half that time. Lauren, I've admitted before, you have strong prayers, because that was actually the case. And she had this vivacious bundle of joy, her 3 years old daughter at the time, Liel. I hadn't interacted with a child in over a decade, and here I was video chatting with this remarkable child, an extension of the woman I love, and I was mesmerized by her personality and her alacrity. I've always told Liel that she would always be my favorite child. I know parents aren't supposed to have favorites, and she told me after my son Zidane was born that it's not fair to Zidane for me to like her more than him. What a mensch. But honestly, she knew me when I existed as only a digital version of a person, a spirit experienced only through a phone. She was the child I interacted with when I had nothing going for me in life, but years of frustration of me not being able to act on my hopes and dreams. Lauren and Liel became my hopes and dreams. Lauren and I had a relationship that was maintained almost exclusively by phone calls. She would visit me from Canada once a year. That was it. Her family and friends were understandably not super excited about Lauren dating a guy in California prison serving a 24-year prison sentence. But she did stand by me, and she believed in me. In 2016, so I met her in 2014. That's when I first met her, and we got together. In 2016, what they called the Youth Offender Bill passed, the California legislation, and I was eligible to receive an early chance at parole. There was a backlog of people the parole board had a schedule to see, so I wasn't sure when they would get to me. It was with this backdrop that me being able to be released a lot sooner than my 2023 release date, that I had to start making immediate plans. There weren't many Orthodox shul options in Orange County, which made Beth Jacob Congregation of Irvine stand out to me that much more when I conducted my initial internet search on my contraband prison cell phone. I spoke with Rabbi Moskowitz about my plans. He sent an introductory email to Rabbi Senior. And I sent Rabbi Senior a 14-page essay from Juvenile Delinquency to Judaism, where, throwing a lot more details here, but where I basically just threw it all out there. This is my life, this is who I was, this is who I am now, and this is who I want to be. But I'm in prison. This is before Zidane was fully in the picture. And what do you know? Rabbi Senior had the audacity to write me back. He told me that Beth Jacob would love to welcome me into the community when I'm able. He sent me this letter on this Beth Jacob Congregation of Irvine stationery. To know that an Orthodox Jewish community would welcome this career criminal, to know that they would give me a chance without me even proving my worth, it really touched me to the core. I actually wrote other rabbis as well. Rabbi Senior, you mentioned other people wrote you. I actually wrote other rabbis, so I'll reveal that to you for the first time. But you were the only one that wrote me back. So thank you, Rabbi. Anytime anyone would ask me about my plans, I would tell them I'm moving to Irvine, and I will be joining Beth Jacob Congregation of Irvine. I had no idea how I would practically make that happen, but hey, you know, that was the plan. Lauren even came to Beth Jacob in 2017 and met with Rabbi Senior. And then over 3 years into my relationship with Lauren, after a prison visit, our son Zidan Mordechai Lev Pryce was born. He was named after the Druze man who died trying to save Jews who were being slaughtered in the Hardenoff synagogue terrorist attack. Several rabbis stated it was proper to name children in his honor, and so we did. I mean, my love for my son, so deep. But thinking back to that specific time, his creation was definitely a moral failing on my part, maybe my biggest one. Not only did I not live up to the standards of basic parental norms, I specifically let down Lauren and her daughter by putting them in an especially challenging circumstance, challenges that we are still contending with to this day. I mean, I had claimed to want to be her partner in life, only taking actions that I at least think will be for her and her daughter's betterment, and yet my actions led to the situation where she was pregnant with the father of the baby in a California prison with a release date that was up in the air. I strained her relationship with her family and her sense of personal agency in the world. Rabbi Senior eventually was behind the scenes helping us out, and eventually we got back in a really good place. Though my teshuva is far from complete, because teshuva between people is not always as simple as just uttering sincere words. Sometimes it needs to be a lifetime of consistent actions. My situation in prison became even more complicated because of the backlog of the cases that the parole board had to hear before me. It pushed my actual parole board hearing until 2 years later than it was supposed to be with the early parole law, and pushed it to 2018. And since I can appreciate a little drama to complicate things at the last moment, the parole lawyer that my sister had hired to represent me at the hearing got banned from coming onto the prison grounds for the hearing. I don't know what that was all about, and he took my money or my sister's money and ran, so I couldn't get an answer to that question either. Now, the vast majority of people in prison in California don't go before an actual parole board. They are simply released when their release date comes up. For lifers, people who are sentenced to life are the small proportion of those that qualified to go before a parole board due to this new law. We actually had to demonstrate years of positive programming in prison, educational accomplishment, self-help group attendance, and display a level of insight and personal accountability that will be analyzed during the hours-long hearing with 2 commissioners and an assistant district attorney. At the time, the Board of Parole released about 20% of the people they saw. So when my lawyer got banned, that didn't necessarily sit well with me at all. They would have appointed me another lawyer to represent me for free, but if I requested for that, my hearing date would have been pushed back another 5 months while they found me a new lawyer and he got acquainted with my case. So, and since my current parole board date was slated to take place on the anniversary of when Lauren and I first started talking, I figured that this was a propitious time as ever. So I went before the parole board, keep on my head like always, and told them about my plans to move to Irvine and attend Beth Jacob and join an Orthodox Jewish conversion program. I don't know what they thought about all of that, but perhaps my story garnered a little bit of credibility because it was too incredulous to not be true. I finally was released on October 22nd of 2018 after serving over 16 years in custody, after spending all of my 20s and half of my 30s incarcerated. The same week that I was released to a halfway house in Los Angeles, I contacted Rabbi Senior. Soon afterward, I submitted my conversion application to the RCC. I still hadn't figured out the how to move to Irvine part. I did manage to find a job washing dishes at a restaurant a few days out of the week. But as you all know, probably wasn't enough to pay rent in Irvine. I did know that I eventually wanted to be a social worker. When I was a know-it-all adolescent, I felt that social workers that I encountered, at least, were not really trying to help me. They couldn't relate to how I was feeling. They were just going to use any truth I told them to provide information to my probation officer and the courts that would be used against me. I felt with my lived experience, I could better connect to people who have struggled with the experiences that I may have similar faced in life. I intimately understood how maladaptive behaviors they may respond with can easily lead to a self-perpetuating cycle that has negative ripple effects to those around them. I wanted to become a social worker, so I did my research while I was surfing on my internet on my contraband cell phone in prison. I decided that I had to enroll in the USC social work program. I also told everybody in prison that I would speak with about that was my plan. So besides moving to Irvine, becoming a Jew, and joining Beth Jacob, my other steadfast goal was to attend USC. In prison, I was able to obtain my Associates of Arts in social and behavioral sciences, but people incarcerated were not eligible for any financial aid or anything like that. So me obtaining a bachelor's degree was a long, drawn-out process. I would tell my family to not send me food packages, but to instead pool their money to purchase a class here and there for me. And I also rented out my cell phone for $50 a night. So put that together, I was able to afford a class here and there. When I paroled, I was 21 units shy of graduating with my bachelor's degree. Also, I had contacted Beth Jacob to see about an internship. And the founder of this great Jewish organization, Harriet Rosetto, personally contacted me for a meeting. This is a brilliant Jewish woman who truly understands addiction and how to connect with Jews who are struggling in general. And she just happens to be now my direct clinical supervisor, now that I'm providing direct therapy to Jewish residents at Beth Jacob. We also relate because she's an LCSW who also used to go into prisons to help incarcerated Jews. And actually, she ended up marrying one of these incarcerated Jews who went on to become the rabbi at Beth Jacob. But she provided me with the needed opportunity to become an intern at Beth Jacob, which I needed for my undergrad at the time. I also needed it now for my grad school. She also connected me with the chaplain there, the director of community development, Adam Siegel, who's been a good friend and has helped me along the way. So I completed all 21 units the first semester I was out. I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology with an emphasis in social welfare. And I immediately applied to the University of Southern California's Suzanne Dwork Peck School of Social Work, and I was accepted. Also, during the time I was living at the halfway house, the ever wonderful and caring Elmans contacted Lee Weissman, who subsequently invited me over for a bowl of soup. It was a surprise to me that he offered me a room of rent when it became available, Baruch Hashem. A month before the scheduled move-in date, I actually obtained a job as a program manager servicing chronically homeless clients who are suffering from high acuity mental health challenges. So I was actually able to pay the rent, Baruch Hashem. But I want you to really think about this. How many people do you know would meet a person one time a person that spent almost the entirety of his adult life in prison for being an armed robber and invite that person to stay in their home. Lee Weissman is a special kind of special. And my conversion program has been an immersive experience in which I personally am able to see how a frum Jewish man lives his daily life. And I know I'm not biased because after Lauren met him, she could not stop talking about how kind and special of a man he is too. So Lee Weissman also provided me my first Shabbos meal. The Elmans, the Hernandezes, still haven't figured out how to say that in plural. I mean, I could go on, and I apologize in advance for not mentioning anybody specifically, but there are too many people to list. Like, so many people from Beth Jacob invited me to Shabbos dinners, have called to check in, text me, engage in conversations with me of genuine concern about my welfare. And when people in the community learned of my story, that only caused them to be even more considerate and kinder. Lauren thought I was being overly gracious in my praise of this community until she came to Irvine and she herself became enthralled. She told me Rabbi Senior is one of the very special rabbis that exists in this world, and that the Beth Jacob community is the only community in America. She's Canadian, so it's the only community in America that she wants to raise our children in. I can't extol the Beth Jacob community enough. This is a warm, accepting, loving community that I will forever be indebted to. Many times I have sat back and just watched the people in shul interact with each other, the children playing, the families laughing, the warmth and concern expressed to each other, and I thank Hashem for allowing me to be a part of this. So we're in this pandemic, obviously it's posed some challenges for my family. Our border is shut down with Canada, and Lauren and I we've had to revert back to prison video chats over the phone to sustain our relationship. But you know, Be'ezrat Hashem, this too will pass. What I am sure of is that I made a promise to myself, to Lauren, to our children, that I will try my hardest to be everything they need me to be. I want them to be proud of me. I want to earn Lauren's family's trust and for them to know that she made a good choice to be with me. That my apology to them and to Lauren will not be in the form of words, but in the form of consistent actions year after year. Want my community, Rabbi Siner, Beth Din, all of Klal Yisrael, and Hashem to know that with all of my actions, I am truly striving to honor the opportunity I have been given. Like I said, I want to thank Rabbi Senior, whole Beth Jacob community for changing my life, for allowing me the opportunity to become a Jew, for allowing me the opportunity to be with my Basher and raise my family and faithfully pass on this inheritance to my children. To all of you, thank you. I tell everybody I meet with, who I'm able to discuss my Jewish journey and my ability to successfully reintegrate into society. I tell them I owe so much of who I have become and who I am becoming to the Beth Jacob community. Just Baruch Hashem for you all. And
Shakor.
Thank you, Omar.
Rabbi,
Yes?
it's Milton. Are you having questions, or can we?
Yes, in just a few moments, if Omar will graciously agree, as I know he will, I will open it up to questions. Omar, I just wanted to ask you just a learning opportunity for us. You know, thank you very much for all the things that we did right, and thank you. It's good to hear that. But what are some of the things that we did wrong, so that we can know in the future how to better serve people when they come through our door and will have challenges feeling comfortable?
I would say don't necessarily know if I like offering critique in a public forum, and there's not really too much critique. I guess I could just be greedy and say that I wish that more random Shabbos tables were opened up in general. Just like that being a thing. Don't get me wrong, I've always had, there's been no time that I haven't had that opportunity, But just for me to get to know more people, because you don't get to know people as much as you do around this table. That's when you will have real deep, in-depth conversations, when you learn more about them personally, as opposed to just a kiddish meal. Being greedy, because again, like sometimes I try to sneak home. Like, you know what, had a rough week. Let me just go home by myself. Call it a night early. And somebody be like, "Where are you going?" Elon's done that before, and many people are doing. Where are you going? Oh, no. So it's been provided, but I guess just to make that
Okay. Okay, duly noted. Thank you. Yes, Omar, you okay with people asking some questions?
Nope, I didn't sign on for that, Rabbi. No, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm good with questions.
Okay, Milton?
You know, I think, Omar, I want to tell you something. I think over the many years, I've listened to a number of people speak, but I have to tell you, I think that your story is one of the most inspirational, I think, that I've ever heard. And I think from where you have come from, your articulation, your command of the English language is just mind-blowing. And I think that you deserve all the success that you wish yourself. Honestly, I think that it's an amazing, amazing story. And I cannot wait to meet you, either shake your hand or give an elbow, but whatever it takes, I just look forward to that day to meet you and Lauren.
From 6 feet away, yeah, at least initially. Thank you
so much. I appreciate that. And as you could imagine, when one hasn't been an adult in the real world, is what we call it when we're in there. One has anxiety about just interacting with just anybody, or just act, but going into a Jewish community, right? That I was especially anxious. So I just appreciate you saying that, and I just appreciate those words very much. So
nice. Any other questions out there?
Well, this is Uzi. Omar, have you thought about what Hebrew name you're gonna get?
Yeah, it's changed a lot because of circumstances. I feel like I'm an adopted child of Ezra, so we've been thinking about going with Yehuda. So we'll see. I haven't made the final call yet.
All right. I just want to make a comment. I always felt a spiritual elevation seeing you in the Minyan, because your presence at the Minyan made me feel like we are accepting community. Your presence made us feel good. So don't think about what we've done for you. It's what you've done for us to make us feel accepting and loving. And it goes both ways, you should understand. And your talk made me very proud, both of you, the community, and the rabbi. And it was spiritually elevating to me. What a great community we have in Irvine. So thank you.
Any other questions out there?
Yeah,
Don't be
Omar,
bashful all of a sudden.
Omar, this is Alan. Hi, what is your relationship now with your mother and your siblings, and what do they feel about your conversion and what you've achieved and what you're going to do?
Oh, thank you actually for asking that question. I feel like I could have gone off into all different paths in this story, trying to make it concise, but I would say the relationship, I really got a relationship with, or obtained a relationship with my mother and my sisters when I was in jail. They showed me what unconditional love was. Obviously, I was completely selfish back then. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And they stood by my side. I mean, I don't know if you know how far Pelican Bay is, but we went into Oregon and back out to get there, right? They would take that trip up there. where there was no just like easy airport to go and then get a car and go there. And so whatever prison, I got letters, I got help. As I mentioned, they supported me in my education. They supported me upon my release. So they showed me what unconditional love is. We have a great relationship. So just a backstory. My mother was actually raised in a Muslim household in Sri Lanka. When she got to America, she converted to Christianity. The household was like nominally Christian, meaning we celebrated, you know, I don't know if we celebrated. We had had dinner around, you know, Xmas and Easter or whatnot, but that was about it. It wasn't like a church every weekend and all that. And they're just happy that I'm doing good. So they asked me all types of questions about Judaism. My mom will still be in the grocery store and saying, Omar, it has an OU on it. Is that all right? Can you eat this or can you eat that? So they totally support it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Anybody else out there?
Thank you. And your story is amazing. And I've seen you in shul, but I didn't know
Omar,
the story. But now we know it. And,
Omar,
great.
Omar,
Yes,
Yeah.
question.
Omar. Yeah, Omar, this is Rabbi Dov Goddesfeld.
Oh, hi, Rabbi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How you doing?
Well, it's so great to see you and to hear. I'm doing great. And it's so great to see you and to hear you. I'm so happy. My wife and I will listen to you. And I say to you in Hebrew, Kol Echai. Kol Echai, it means best for those who are living to see what you have achieved since you left the prison. So I wish you all the best and to your family. And I hope to see you soon sometimes when people are allowed to get together.
Definitely. For everybody that doesn't know, he's the rabbi that took over when Rabbi Moskowitz retired. So he was my rabbi when I left, when I paroled from prison.
So
All
on
the
behalf
best
of
to
Beth
you.
Jacob, we'd like to thank you, Rabbi, for all that you did, bringing Omar to the point that he was ready to come to us. So we thank you, Rabbi, very, very much.
And
Thank you.
it's a shout out again because I see he's over there just watching in the pew, so to speak. Rabbi Moskowitz, it's good to see you.
Omar, it's wonderful to see you. It's great to see your community also. Jihad, I see you down there. So
Yes,
I know that you've always been a strong individual in regards to not only physically, but your character, your spiritual commitment, your commitment to the community. And our tradition even underscores that by asking the question, who's strong? It's one who really maintains control over their so want you to know that I'm very proud of you, and you serve as an amazing role model to everybody. You still a vegetarian? Vegan?
What's that?
You still vegan?
I'm vegan except on Shabbos and Yom Tov.
Things have changed.
You know, one comment I always thought was amazing is that all of us here were born Jewish. We never had a choice of choosing. You, Omar, had a choice of choosing. You had a choice of redeeming yourself remarkably. We never, all of us, no, you know, we just grew up somewhat normally. You had a tough life, and you had a choice to redeem yourself, and you succeeded. So you're so precious because of your ability to overcome, you know, your youthful needs. If I don't know how to name it, but you were able to redeem yourself, and that's such a remarkable story and uplifting spiritual story for us.
Omar,
Yes, Jihad, speak, please.
how you doing? Omar and I were both at CMC in San Luis Obispo. And a question that I want to ask Omar, and what I would like to say too, and also hello to Rabbi Dove and Rabbi Lon Moskowitz. Omar and I were both under the tutelage of his leadership and his teachings for many years. But Omar, one of the things that I want to say to you is one of the things that you and I, the common understanding and respect that we had for one another, you being converting to Judaism and me converting to Islam, and then having to deal with the issues that was going on inside, and then having the opportunity to come outside and still build and continue to move forward. Omar, my question to you is, do you have any plans on going back inside and doing any further teaching to individuals in the Jewish community?
First of all, it's good to see you. He was the lead Muslim chapel clerk, while I was the lead Jewish chapel clerk in prison. And the funny thing is, right, he got out recently after serving a life sentence. And guess where I ran into him at? On the corner of Pico Robertson. So we had a nice, have a little frozen yogurt shop. I got Rabbi Moskowitz, I got the vegan. It wasn't Shabbos, so I got the vegan one they had. It's a good question. I do know I get a piece of that when I'm at Beth Teshuva, because we're dealing with people. So just to let you know about Beth Teshuva, not only are they dealing with Jews who are recovering from addiction, but also they have an alternative sentencing program. So people in lieu of going in custody will go to that program. And also they started accepting people who are paroling after serving a life sentence. So I do get to interact with people on that particular level. But particularly to your point, if given the opportunity, I would love to go back inside and use my personal experience inside and outside to connect with people and perhaps influence them.
Nice. I would just add that I think the two of you are an amazing team. I love to see Omar and Jihad, the two of you, going to different schools and speaking about just, about the importance of religion and religions getting along together and respecting one another, and how all of the faith religion should be brothers in arms together, as opposed to clashing with one another. I like to see the two of you guys hit the circuit.
You beat me to the punch. Omar, Jihad, you both have a spot at my Shabbos table anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Omar, I have a question for you. Is that, do you think that they say that in life everything happens for a reason? Do you think that if it was not for the fact that you started with a life of crime, you may have never ever found your way to Judaism?
So it's a loaded question, because I would never want to say that the choices that I made, the poor choices that I made, were necessary. Hashem perhaps would have found another way, and I wish I took another way, but I truly appreciate the fact that I know that if it wasn't for the prison experience, at least to my understanding, what has been revealed to me, I wouldn't have gone down this path to Judaism. I was the type of person that needed to sit in a room and just think in order to come to this sort of path. But so I without a life of crime, without prison, I don't believe I would have been even exposed to Judaism. Prior to me going to jail, I know I met some Jewish people, but it never registered that there were Jewish people, or that there was some other religion. It never even registered, never even crossed my mind that Judaism as a religion existed, or that I had ever interacted with them. So it would have been a big leap for me to go from that to actually practicing Judaism.
Omar, I have a question with your work at Beit Shuvah.
What is the most rewarding part of your work, and what is the most challenging part of your work in relationship to your story?
Well, those are good questions. Something maybe my professor at USC may ask a question like that. What's the most challenging is, I guess, the most challenging is seeing certain things in residents there that I know they're not in that point in their life yet to change. Heaven forbid I go in there with that mentality, right? But nonetheless, when I see certain things in people that I saw in myself back then, that's challenging. What I love a lot about it too, though, is that I feel that when people know my story, because typical in a typical therapeutic relationship, there's not a lot of self-disclosure on the therapist's part. But Teshuva is kind of different, and so they want therapists to self-disclose and connect. And so I feel like when I do connect and they hear about my past, that the residents there, they just change the way they interact with me, and they feel more comfortable opening up to me about things that they might not necessarily open up to a regular therapist, so to speak. So I do appreciate the ability to connect with people in that particular way, especially Jews that I have a certain affinity to or understanding of, because I was in a Jewish community in prison. So that was the community I know. And so I do appreciate being able to connect with people in a way that I understand and they kind of understand me.
Great. Okay. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we will say thank you very much, Omar. And as Uzi said, as others said, you've been a real inspiration to us. And I know I gained tremendously from all of the converts that we work with at the shul, because there is a certain drive and conviction that, you know, when you have a gift, you don't always appreciate the gift. When you see someone else who's really striving to attain that gift, it makes you sit back and reflect on the blessing that you have. And I think, Omar, you are a blessing. You've been a blessing to our community, and you've helped us to focus on the blessings that we have as being born into the Jewish community, and all the richness and depth that it offers. So thank you for being a blessing in so many ways, and thank you for sharing not just your time but your kishkas, your true feelings. You know, as many times as I've heard different parts of your story, I heard some things tonight that moved me very much, that you hadn't shared with me before, and it gave me another perspective. So I appreciate that. And once again, we'll be meeting again tomorrow night, 7:30, on the hidden depth and structure of the Ten Commandments. Tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. An introduction to Yizkor, and at 8:30, being that we won't be able to gather together on Shavuot, on Shabbos, when we normally say Yizkor for the three regalim, the three pilgrimage holidays, we'll have Yizkor tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. I have Yizkor booklets hanging from my doorknob. Anyone who would like a Yizkor booklet, please stop by and pick up the booklets, and we'll see each other tomorrow night at 7:30. Thank you very, very much.
For Omar.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Beth Jacob.
Shalom.
Hold on, Leah.
Thank you, Shalom, Jihad. Thank you.
Hold on, Rabbi. Hold on, one more comment.
Great.
Liel.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. I have a question for Omar. What made you want to be Jewish?
You missed the beginning. I have to watch it again.
Great question. Even though you know you have the most access to me. the Jews have a special relationship with Hashem. There's only one God, and the whole Jewish tradition is a special tradition that allows one to connect with Hashem in a way that is not available in any other way. And because that special relationship spoke to me, and I realized how special it was, I wanted to be a part of that. I want to share that with you. So that's also further motivation.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Great seeing everyone, guys.
Okay. Uzi, we miss you. Come back.
I miss you guys too.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Omar.
Take care, Boma.
Really blessed.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
you.
Good night.
Very
Bye, guys.
enlightening.
Thank you. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.